Hello, this is Mark. After the Trump election and his victory, um, it's been quite a contentious environment in our country. It's caused quite a division in people, and we have a lot of, well, there's pretty much a line right down the middle of the country that there's some protesters out there that really hate Trump supporters. And I think a lot of those people have their opinions. They're offended by what Trump said. And so this video is going to be about how to bridge that gap. And one of the things that I recognize in this gap is a lack of understanding and also a lack of facts, real facts that would help any person make a rational decision to really weed through all the political hype and all the propaganda that's been in this campaign to really find the truth. And a basic structure for that, what I've come across, because I have some people in my own family that were a part of that protest, and they really, and I know them personally, and what I do know is that they have no knowledge of these trade agreements that were signed in the past. Okay, for example, NAFTA, the North Atlantic Free Trade Agreement that the Clintons had signed. Okay, and what I want to do is share a basic strategy on how to bridge the gap with people in your family, or it could be in your community, or it could be people at work or your neighborhood, friends that you have, you know, that you find that they don't really understand what a vote for Hillary meant. Okay, so, and Hillary was very, very supportive of the TTP, which was the Trans-Pacific Partnership Trade Agreement, which would have been a further extension of the NAFTA trade agreement. But anyways, one of the main things before you even start a conversation with somebody, you have to talk around the subject. You can't just say Hillary is evil and the people that voted for her, I can't stand her and I can't stand what she represented. That's not going to work, okay? So you have to talk around the subject and use common sense questions, simple, basic common sense questions. What's important to them? And I think the number one thing for anybody here, regardless of your political view, or your sexual preference, whether you be gay or lesbian, or if you're liberal, or if you're, conservative minded, whatever those viewpoints are, is one thing that we can all agree on, okay, is common ground. And that's what you have to build a conversation on. Common ground, okay? Number one priority, ask somebody, how important is your job to you? Okay, that's where we're going to start off. Okay, how would you feel if you voted for somebody and because that person was elected a year or two or three down the road, you found out because of their domestic policies and their foreign policy has caused you to lose your job? Okay, so that's where I'm going with this, and this is the structure on how to start a conversation with somebody. So number one, you need to establish some real facts, okay, and a list of priorities. So you start off the conversation is, how important is your job to you? Okay, where would you put that on a list of priorities? In other words, would you rate that very high, or would you rate that very low? Okay. All right, so that is the number one thing. And anybody that has even the slightest notion of education would say that's really important. If they own their own property and they're paying rent and they have their own bills, they would say that is really important. Everybody would. Okay, so once you establish that fact, okay, you would say, okay, now are you aware about the latest reports of the job market? And are you aware, are you happy with your income now? Would you like to make more money or would you like to make less money? Okay. Would you want your job or your company that you work for to end up going to Mexico, Canada, China, or the Middle East, or any of those countries? Would you want that to happen? Okay. And of course they'll say no. Okay, so and this is one of the things that um, a lot of these people don't even realize, and a lot of them are not even old enough to know the difference. I had some family members that are protesting and walking out of their schools and their colleges and and they're protesting Trump, and they don't even understand what they're protesting. They only look at it from a viewpoint of what he said. Okay? So establishing a list of priorities, what's really important is your future job, even if they don't have a job yet. You just ask them, would you like to get a good job? And would you want that pay of that job to go up or down? Okay, and of course they're going to answer, yeah, I want to get a good job. I want to do this. I want to do that. Well, how would you feel about a trade deal that would ship your jobs overseas? And they would say, well, no, of course, I don't want that. I don't want to, if I want to be, let's say, work in the manufacturing business, or if I want to have a company manufacturing clothes, or providing a service or something like that, I wouldn't want that market to go overseas. These are the kind of common sense questions you got to ask them. And this is the approach. Leave the politics out of it, okay? But this is like basic common sense, because this is what's really lacking, okay? Common facts, common sense facts. So those have to be established. Okay, so from there, you could share some information. You could say, well, do you believe that NAFTA that was signed by the Clintons many years ago, do you believe that was a good trade deal? Okay, and what these trade deals actually do, and I'll give you a demonstration. If you look at the average annual income of, let's compare three countries, United States, Canada, and Mexico. Okay? And I'll read this right off of the fact sheet here. Mexico has an annual income in dollars a year of average of $14,867. Canada has an average income per year of $47,843. United States has the average income yearly of $58,714. Okay, so this North Atlantic Trade Agreement, NAFTA, better known as, was a trade agreement to allow free trade and movement of products back and forth. Sounds like a good idea, right? I mean, yeah, it sounds like a good idea. See, the problem with it is it takes these three averages of annual income and it brings it to a more level playing field. Okay, so the country, which is United States, that has an average income per employee yearly of $58,000. Now you have to compete with Canada, that's got $47,000 annual income, and Mexico, which has $14,867 annual income. Now, if you average those three and divide it by 3, you have an average of $40,474. Okay, so let's just say you're talking to a person who doesn't quite understand this, and say, look, Would you like to get a job for $58,000 a year in America? And they would probably say, yeah. And some of them might even have an income higher than that. Okay. And then you ask them this. Okay, now, how would you like that job's pay to drop to $40,474? Okay. Of course, they're going to say, of course not. That's a drop of $18,000. That's a huge chunk. You know, so how am I going to pay my car payments? How am I going to pay my mortgage and feed my family? You see? So they could see that's common sense. That's basic. That's just basic math. Okay, and that's exactly what ends up happening in these trade agreements. It's a global competition, okay, for wages. You see, because corporations, global corporations in the United States don't have to respect the American people. They can go and set up shop in Mexico. How many of you out there know somebody or know about all the jobs that have been shipped to Mexico, to China, and overseas because of these types of agreements? Because global corporations wanting to set up shop in their manufacturing bases in other countries. And the big driving factor is the annual income that you can pay your employees in those countries. They don't have to recognize American law, you see. So they go and they set up shop in these other countries, and then they take those jobs that were once here in America, and now they're shipped over to Mexico. For example, my brother-in-law, John, he had a job working for Rainbird Sprinkler Company, and they manufactured sprinkler parts and all the types of things that you water your grass, your yard, and your outdoors. And that job was here in America. Okay, he actually worked one of the machines that made those parts. Okay, now he became unemployed because they decided they wanted to move to Mexico. That was because of NAFTA. Okay, so knowing that as a fact, that's a fact. That's not an opinion. Okay, that gives you an idea what happens in these trade agreements. You see? So he lost his job, and he had to go because he was partially handicapped, but they allowed him to work there because he had a sit-down job. He lost that job, and then he was on permanent disability. He wasn't able to get another job. Okay? And everybody else that was at that company lost their job. Okay, you have car manufacturing companies setting up shop in Mexico. That used to be pretty much just American industry manufacturing, which really what helped this economy, put a lot of people to work. So NAFTA, if you really want to understand it and look at our economy, you would ask somebody, do you believe our economy is doing really well? You know, the vast majority of people will tell you no, they don't feel good about it. So that's common knowledge. It's undeniable now, okay? Because now you have to go out and people looking for employment, you have to have 1, 2, 3 part-time jobs, okay, now, just to make one income. And those 3 part-time jobs, they're counting those as new jobs. But they're not telling you that they're 20-hour and 30-hour limit jobs. So you can't just get one good paying job in this country anymore. You have to, if you have a family and you're trying to support it and you're looking to get employed, you have to have 2 or 3 part-time jobs to make it ends meet now. Okay? And that's why the new jobs statistics from the government are just out to lunch. They're false, okay? They say job growth. Yeah, part-time job growth, okay? And then the people that are unemployed are not even counted anymore, okay? So getting these facts together, it helps to clear up things. Now, this upcoming trade agreement, which will vastly expand the NAFTA deal, okay, and open up the market even further to Europe and Asia and all the countries over there, it starts to create a bigger market for global annual income competition, okay? And it's the the TTP, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, okay? And that is the new deal that when Barack Hussein Obama was elected in 2008, he was against it, okay? According to these reports, he was strongly against that trade agreement, but now he's a large supporter of it, okay? And what this will do is this will put China even more into the mix. In other words, they'll be empowered, and these other countries that have really low wages, for example, just to give you an idea as a comparison, when you bring China into the picture, again, we'll go over it. Mexico is 14,800 annual income, okay? Canada, 47,800 annual income. United States, 58,700 annual income average. And then when you bring China into it, they have an average income of about $12,750 a year. Now, when you take all four of those and you divide it by 4, it equals, no, actually, yeah, it'll actually, let me see this. I want to make sure I did this right. It'll actually bring it down even further, okay? But I'll go ahead and add it up real quick. 14,7 plus, and then we had 47, 8 plus, and then we had 58, plus, and then we had 12,000, 750 plus, okay, and then you divide that by 4. So now when you bring China into it, it goes from average from the 4, you have Mexico, you have Canada, United States, and including China now, you have 4. It brings it from the previous $40,474, comparing the 3 prior ones, Mexico, United States, and Canada. If you bring China into the mix, it drops it down from 40,400 to 33,300. So the highest paid incomes in these established, nations like America, the higher up standard of living you are, the further you have to fall. You see? So it causes these other countries that have a much lower income to prosper and rise up, because you're now making it a global average. America being way high up like this, and you average all these other ones which are lower, it comes down like this. America comes down and they go up. You see? It's called redistributing the wealth. Okay? That's what's going on with these trade agreements. We're going to now be on a global scale, redistributing the wealth of America and spreading it out all over the world. See? So the highest standard living countries have the furthest to fall. And one of them is definitely America. There's others, but we have the furthest to fall because we have the most to lose. And that's why these trade agreements are bad. Now, if you take these into consideration, And these are now your facts, and you understand that. Okay, Obama right now is one of the strongest proponents of this Trans-Pacific Partnership. Okay, and so he's willing to sell out, the nation with this trade agreement. Here's an interesting thing now. Now that we have Trump as president, and he had mentioned, and I think it went right over the Clinton supporters' heads. They didn't even understand what he was talking about when he said these trade agreements have to be renegotiated. I don't even think they even understood that. Okay? So this is where you're trying to bridge the gap between the other person and educate them and give them some facts and let them think about it, because this is going to diffuse their anger. You see? This is going to expose the deception and the lies that the Clintons were willing to perpetuate and sell this country out even further. The Clintons would have been just a continuation of the same policies of the Obama administration. Okay? So it says here in this article, I'll read it to you. China pledges further opening as leaders scramble for free trade. Okay? And this is just recent. This article has just been written after President Trump, or President-elect Trump, got elected. Chinese President Xi Jinping pledged to open the economy further on Saturday as leaders of the Asia-Pacific countries sought new free trade options following Donald Trump's election to U.S. president on the promise to scrap or renegotiate trade deals. So that's what Trump was talking about. He's saying this country's getting sold out, to a global market, and we're going to lose our jobs, because of greedy corporations, global corporations, And so this is what it needs to be understood. This is what these protesters don't understand. They don't get it. They haven't been educated. They just don't know. And once a person is educated, and most of us have common sense, it will change your mind. And this will diffuse these protesters. It'll educate them. They'll come out of this darkness of deception and come into the light of the truth. Okay? So this is the approach. All eyes were on China at this year's APEC summit in Lima, Peru, just over a week after Trump's surprise victory in the United States, dashed hopes of the largest ever U.S. proposed trade deal, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP, coming to fruition. Because they know very well that Trump was against it. He said that's one of the worst deals besides NAFTA. It's even worse than NAFTA. But it's just a continuation of the sellout, the distribution of wealth of America across the whole world. We lose our sovereignty as a nation. We lose our economic sovereignty, to have our own economy and to be able to have our own standard of living here. So this is what we're talking about. So this is the basis that you build this conversation off, is that you ask questions and cause them to think. Don't call them stupid. Don't offend them. Talk about it. Ask some basic questions. Get them to think. You see? This is bridging the gap. U.S. President Barack Obama has championed the TPP as a way to counter China's rise. But he has now stopped trying to win congressional approval for the deal signed by 12 economies in the Americas and Asia Pacific, excluding China, without U.S. approval. Okay. The current agreement cannot be implemented. Okay, so, Obama hasn't been successful in getting that deal signed and sealed, okay? But now China's like, oh, Hillary didn't win. That means we're not going to get this deal. So now we're going to have to deal with Trump. Okay. Well, this is not going to cause war with China. Some may say that, but it won't, because it's not that serious of a deal. It's just a trade agreement. Okay. And China still wants to trade. They still need to trade. Okay. But now Trump could say, hey, we want to renegotiate that. We want to come up with something else that's more beneficial to the American people, more fair. And these global corporations, they're going to hate this, because they set up shop in China and they can work their workers 60 hours, a week and not pay them overtime. There's no regulation over there like there is here. There's no fair labor laws, to protect us from being used like slaves. Okay. There's labor laws here in America, and that's why largely, and our wages have been higher in the past. That's why these global corporations say, hey, we don't want to pay American wages. We want to take off and go overseas. Well, what Trump is moving to do is to bring those jobs back. And for countries, if they're going to do that, he's going to put taxes and tariff charges on the imports that are selling out our jobs. So the government will get money, our government will get money, from these sellouts, So it's interesting when you look at it like this. It's really common sense. It's not hard to understand. I'm a pretty simple-minded guy, and I believe I have common sense. And this is one of the ways to bridge the gap of misunderstanding with other people, because they have a serious gap of understanding. They just think about what Trump said. I've seen interviews of these people, and they're our fellow Americans. They're just not educated. They just don't know. Like if I'm not an expert in the law, and I don't have the mind of a doctor or knowledge of things like that. So I wouldn't speak about those things that I don't know about. I would want to get educated about, and I wouldn't want to be called stupid because I don't. I just don't know. So you don't want to create an offense with other people when you're communicating these things. You have to come at it from a different angle. You have to communicate it with them with just common sense questions. And then they need to be educated about what these trade deals mean. See, we're living in a NAFTA, a post-NAFTA economy here in America. Okay, this is what the long-term effects has. When NAFTA was signed, it didn't cause our economy to crash right away. It takes years for it to develop. Okay, but you have a downturning and a downfall of our economy, and unequal trade deals, that causes this country to lose jobs. It causes this country to have higher unemployment rates. It has caused this country to have a much higher homeless rate, and that's an obvious fact that anybody could see that. Anybody living in this country, in just about any city, can see that, yeah, that's a fact, And there's a lot of people out there that, have part-time jobs, according to what I've researched. There's more and more part-time jobs than there are full-time one, When I was growing up, it was like when you went out to look for a job, it typically wasn't a part-time job. And if you were looking for full-time employment and decent pay, there was a lot of jobs out there to get. I mean, a lot. And it wasn't really hard to get them. I mean, if you were looking for a week or two, you would find one. But now, according to what I've been told by friends and family and people that I know, is that, it's hard just to even get a part-time job now. Okay, and if you do get a part-time job, then it's still not enough money. You still can't pay your bills, you see? So, I mean, I hope this helps people. It's an approach that, you just compare See, now the priorities, like Trump protesters, they'll say, I don't like what he said. I don't like what, how important is it? This is what you ask them. Okay. Once they establish a priority, the number one priority is their income to be able to pay their bills, okay, have a roof over their heads, and have food on the table for their family. Okay. That's more important than what somebody said. Okay. That has to be put in proper perspective. You see, because the number one thing in a Trump protester is, I don't like what he said. I don't like what he represented. You see, they're not even aware of the sellout of these trade agreements. Okay? I mean, Trump actually intends to do good for the American people, for them, the very protesters that are out there yelling and screaming and wreaking havoc and making threats and beating up Trump supporters. You see, this is part of what has to be exposed, and it has to be brought out slowly to where they can realize, they're actually fighting against something that they really need. They need a stable economy, they need a stable job, and they need stable provision and income for their family. That's one thing that we all have in common. Regardless of your religious beliefs, your political beliefs, or whatever side of the fence you stand on, we're all Americans, and that's the number one thing, for our nation. Okay, so that's basically covers the whole thing. I mean, that's all I have for today, and try it. Share these facts, and when I post this video, I'll put the links down to these articles and these links of information so you can share it with other people, and hopefully we can help educate our fellow Americans that basically have been uneducated and left behind in the No Child Left Behind campaign of Bush. I mean, our education system has just gone right out the window. I mean, you have, and this really is shocking, you have the principals of schools that our kids go to, okay, saying, yeah, go out and protest. Okay, and these people are the head of our education system. They're the principals, the vice principals, the teachers. They're promoting, yeah, go out and protest. You see, and they don't even understand this stuff. You see, so we have a real lacking education system, not only morally and ethically lacking, but really lacking in basic knowledge just to give someone enough common sense to be able to make a discernment between what is true and what is false. And so what does it say in Scripture for a believer to share the light of the truth? And it's talking about, it's a wide spectrum. It's not only the salvation of Jesus Christ, that is first and foremost, absolutely, but it's also to uncover the lies and deception, because they're stumbling in the darkness. They don't understand what's going on, okay? And they're really clueless. They're being manipulated by a false education system and a false theology of thinking, And that's what we have to try to break through, that barrier, to move forward, because, I would say be careful if you're going to talk with other people about any of this stuff. You have to kind of feel out the situation. And if they're really angry about this Trump election, him winning and stuff like that, you're going to have to walk around that delicately and just, maybe keep your mouth shut for a while until things blow over. But this is one of the ways, or one of the strategies, that you can talk to them about it and say, how important is your job? How important is it for you to have a job You know, would you want your job to go overseas? Would you want your job to end up in Mexico? You know, how would you like to lose $18,000 a year? You know, because of this competition of global market of jobs and in income, you know. So this is part of what I'm trying to share with people. Um, you know, once you become educated with common sense, you know, that's the most important thing. You know, I don't care if I know about, you know, every rule of the law and government and all this other stuff. I just want to have common sense. I want to be able to have the discernment to figure out what is true and false, you know. And I measure a lot of things by what Scripture says, you know. I mean, just about everything. But in bridging the gap and bringing peace to this country and to, you know, wake people up, this is one of the ways you can do it. So I hope this helps. God bless. And I got to go now. Have a nice day. Okay, bye.